A lot. I'm super excited to talk about this work, and of course, it's a privilege to be talking along with all these people here. I'm particularly excited to talk about this work because I am just kind of starting to string all of this work together that I've presented in isolation before, but I'm really interested in to hear people's feedback on this. In particular, at the end is a couple things I'm sort of prepping for publication, and so I'm interested to hear of what people think about this work. So I'm going to talk about dreams, lucidity, and morning mood and how these all interact with each other. So this ceaseless cycle of sleep and wake here is where we're going to start. So these things interact with each other constantly. We know that sleep quality impacts your waking experience. This is often, get good sleep, and we know that this is going to impact how we feel while we're awake. And waking experience is also going to impact your sleep quality. So what you do during the day impacts what you go through at night. And when people say get good sleep, what are they talking about? Often they're talking about things like total time in bed, go to bed at a reasonable hour, get up at a reasonable hour, the length of time that you sleep, don't oversleep, don't undersleep. And then a little more modern approach is to look at different sleep stages. So are you getting enough N2 sleep? Are you getting enough REM sleep? And while we may not have thought about this at home that much, now you have all these apps that tell you whether you're doing this right or wrong. And then we can talk about the number of naps and number of awakenings. And these aren't out of nowhere. This is the National Sleep Foundation's recommendations from 2017. These are the parameters that they recommend sleep quality based on. And so what do we think about in the inverse when we think about how waking experience is going to impact your sleep quality? Here we're thinking of things like stress. If you have trauma, it's definitely going to impact whether the quality of your sleep. It might be harder to fall asleep when you're excited. It's harder to fall asleep when you're anxious. You might be falling asleep and you ruminate on these negative memories, and so it prevents your ability to fall asleep. What I want to highlight here is that these things on the left, these are mostly have to do with experience while you're awake. So these are kind of like phenomenological things. It feels like something to be stressed and excited and anxious. And these are all things that you go through and as part of the psychological aspect of being awake. But over on the right here, none of these have to do with sleep psychology. And these are all just kind of objective measurement parameters of whether you're kind of, some of them are physiological and some of them are even more boring, which is like, are you going to sleep or waking up at the right time? But of course, there is an experience during sleep, and you experience things all night, and there is a phenomenology of sleep. And so what I'm going to kind of ask here is there some psychological component to sleep quality? And coming off the last talk is perfect, right? Memory reactivation, which I'm not going to talk about a whole lot here, is something that's going on during sleep. And then you have all these dreams, whether you recall them or not, these are experiences that you go through. So we're going to hone in on the interaction here, where what I'm really interested in is what happens from sleep to wake. So the experiences that you go through and affect your waking life. So you can have some cool dreams, right? You could dream about surfing and winning the surfing competition and falling in love, whichever one of these things is kind of your thing. You can have these positive experiences during sleep. You might also have some bad dreams, right? You might have your irrational fear of bats might crop up whenever you go to sleep. Maybe you have a weird alien abduction sleep paralysis experience. Or maybe you dream that the law has finally caught up with you, and only then when you wake up do you realize that you're all good. So my point is that a multitude of memories are being reactivated during sleep. Some of these might be experienced as dream content, and others are not going to be experienced as dream content. And even a further subset of those are going to be recalled dreams, and others won't. But regardless, these are all psychological phenomena that are occurring while you're sleeping, and that the underlying neural processes that express these experiences during wake are reinstated. So my point here is that the brain doesn't really care whether you're dreaming or not, right? A stressful experience during a dream is a stressful experience, and you don't think, oh, well, that was just a dream, and it's not until you wake up. So these experiences are very real while you're dreaming. So why might why would psychological components not be an aspect of sleep quality? Well, I think it's kind of a new thing that sleep is no longer a black box. This is kind of a new, we have a new increased understanding of sleep, which is why we're all here talking about it. And it's only now that we can measure and manipulate the psychological content of sleep as well as we can. There's new measurement approaches, neural decoding, or you can decode the memory reactivation. A lot of that stuff is, the whole premise of that is that you are training your algorithms on waking experience and then testing it on sleep. So the very fact that you can measure memory reactivation during sleep is evidence of this. There's two-way dream communication, which I'll talk about in a second, and then text analytics, which is going to be a big part of my talk, which is to say that we can now extract a lot more data out of dream reports than we could in the past. And then there's new manipulation approaches, like we just heard about, targeted memory reactivation. You can entrain slow waves with audio, and there's a whole subset of field of dream engineering. There's all kinds of promising approaches to manipulate sleep. So just a couple examples here of this. Memory reactivation during sleep can be biased towards specific memories. Thankfully, you're just getting one slide of this because you just heard about it for an hour. So I don't have to do too much setup here, just to say that when people do, when you ask people to solve some creative task, and then they go to sleep, and if you replay some tone that you've paired with that task, they perform better on that the next day. So than the people that were not cued. So here above 0 on the y-axis means that the people that were cued performed better. And so the point of this is twofold. One is that memories are being reactivated during sleep, presumably spontaneously. So there is this psychological component of sleep, and then also that we can do something about it, that we can choose which memories we want to reactivate. And another cool thing is this two-way communication, which might bypass this pesky dream report, where you might not trust people waking up and talking about what they went through, so you can maybe just have them report that on the spot. And so the setup here is that the experimenter has the participant go to sleep, and then you hook up all the standard PSG to the participant, scalp electrodes, and so forth. You also give them some external stimulation, and so some sensory cue setups. And so when they go to sleep, while they remain asleep, you give them some signals, and then they tell you whether they're processing that or not. And so what this looks like here is the brain data in blue is showing you that this person is asleep indeed. And then the experimenter will give them some cues. In this example is your light stimulation, where they ask them to do this math problem at 4-0, and then they can respond out with eye movements, all while being asleep, telling you what's going on. So this is all to kind of say that the black box of sleep, there's a new view of sleep, and that we can now get some more insight into what's going on, into the phenomenology of sleep. So why am I going to focus on the influence of dreams if I'm saying that memory reactivation and dreams both are psychological components of sleep? Well, one is because Suzanne just talked about it, and that kind of covered the ground. But actually, there's strong existing ties between dreams and emotions. And so there's reason to go down this path. And this quote, dreams, they feel real while we're in them, probably the most pulled quote from Inception. And it doesn't even really have to do with lucid dreaming here. This is what I was talking about before about the brain doesn't really care whether you're awake or asleep. So I think that if there's an influence of our sleep phenomenology carried into waking, it's going to be these really intense feelings that feel very real while they're being experienced. Also, dream reports provide really, really rich phenomenological data. I think previously, you might not have been able to extract as much information because of all the manual coding involved. But again, we have a lot of methods to get around that now. And now, of course, I'll mention the caveats, especially to preface Melanie attacking me for poking dream reports, that it's going to be memory for the event might be a little bit poor. So we don't know if we can trust them completely, right? And another thing is that the content can be highly variable across individuals. I think dreams are noisy, that's for sure. But I think that what they provide us, which is this so we also don't have to be as targeted about report X, report Y. When they report the whole experience, we can explore a lot more aspects there. So I think that they're really useful. Why focus on the influence of lucid dreams in particular? These also have lots of qualitative support for their connection to well-being, lots of survey data and lots of books and stuff have been published about about lucid dreams leading to better waking well-being. And also they can be induced. If I want to know, if I'm interested in whether something impacts waking mood, I would like it to be something that I can do something about, and I know that we can induce lucid dreams, so it seems useful. So I'm going to talk about two things. One is that dream mood contributes to waking mood, and I'm going to talk about what I think is the process from lucid dream to positive waking mood. And I'm just going to kind of split this into two halves. So first, the relationship between dream and waking mood. So does dream mood impact your waking mood? Well, we know that wake experience impacts dream experience, which is the inverse of this. This is well more studied. This is kind of continuity hypothesis stuff. And I think that Michael Schradl has come up with increasingly creative ways to provide evidence for this. The latest is that if you have a cat, you dream about cats. And so if you have a cat, you have about 12% of your dreams have cats in them. If you used to have a cat, about 5%. And if you never had a cat, you're not really going to have any cat dreams. But the inverse of that, which is what I'm more interested in, is this dream experience then impact your waking experience. And here we're not going to look at cats because we're going to look at mood, right? Because the content is less relevant here. You don't think that if you dream about a cat, you're going to come across a cat tomorrow. That's not really the logic that we're working with. But it might be more of a mood influence, where if I am angry, then I wake up, I'm angry in my dream, I can wake up angry. That makes a little bit of sense. So if you ask people, does your dream mood impact your waking mood? If you just ask them that question, do you think so? Then almost everybody says yes, that they at least subjectively feel like that's the case. Another point of evidence for this is that for nightmare sufferers, the day after their nightmares they're worse on mental health. So they're filled with anxiety and lower on other mental health measures. So for frequent nightmare sufferers, they're not having nightmares every night. When they do, they have a worse day. And then self-reported dream and morning emotions are correlated. If you wake people up and ask them how they felt in their dream and how they felt in the morning, those two things are connected. So we asked this question by running a longitudinal sleep and wake diary study, where people woke up and we asked them to describe their entire dream. And then we also asked them some Likert scale questions, a subset of those which were related to emotion, and how positive were your emotions while dreaming, and how positive are your current emotions. And so if we don't focus on the dream report yet, even though that's where I think the powerful stuff is, we're going to just look at the Likert scale questions. And if we have dream emotion here, where 9 is higher positive mood and 9 is higher wake mood here, these things are very correlated, highly correlated, and the same is true for negative emotions. So again, explicit ratings of dream and wake emotion are highly correlated. But you might not really like this, because these two things are tough to disentangle. If you wake somebody up and you say, hey, how did you feel in your dream and how do you feel right now at the same time, then even if somebody wants to, it might be hard to kind of separate those two moods, those two emotions. And so it just might be kind of a response bias. So what we're going to do is apply text analyses to these dream reports, which what I think is still imperfect, but a much more objective measure of dream mood. And so what we're going to do here is use Luke, which is a dictionary-based approach to text analysis. There's a bunch of ways to approach these text analyses, and we're going to focus on Luke for my talk. So I'm going to spend, this is for 2 projects, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what this is. Luke has all of these different word categories, like anxiety words, that psychologists have spent lots of time validating. And so they build these, this is kind of the special sauce of Luke, is that it has these psychologically validated dictionaries. They do lots of ratings and semantic similarity scores to get these words together. And so anxiety words might be afraid, alarmed, anxious, and ashamed. These are just the first ones in alphabetical order from this category. And then there's also different word categories, like social. You can look at social words, you can look at anxiety words, you can look at anger words, and all these different things. So how this might look in practice is that you might have this dream report. I was in a wide open field with bright, bold grass on flat green hills, like a digital place. Everything had a surface mesh made by triangles. I was astounded by it. You might pump that into Luke. And Luke does its magic, and it says, okay, we found 2 positive emotion words. Let's divide that by the total amount of words, and we're just going to multiply it by 100 to get a percentage to make it a little more easy to digest in our brains. And we're going to say that's 6% positive emotion in that dream report. So now you apply this to a bunch of different dream reports, and you see if some subset of your dreams have more or less emotion. It's objective, and it's applicable to large data sets. There's no manual intervention other than minor cleanup and things like that, which is what makes this particularly useful. Also, Luke has a huge existing literature in psychological research. Luke in social psychology is a big deal. So there's a lot of backing and reason to trust this program. And it's been applied to dream reports a lot before. This whole kind of idea of applying text analytics to dreams is kind of a booming thing, I think. And so this is a recent review paper from this year, which is a really good summary of these concepts and what's been done and all the different ways besides Luke that you can approach dream analysis. So if you're into this thing, I'd suggest it. So what does this look like when we did it? So we applied this to those dream reports, and we might look at all of the different word categories that have to do with affect. And so here we're going to present a mixed effects regression model. So I'm presenting here anything above 0 is going to mean that this category predicted a more negative morning mood, and anything less than 0 is going to be a more positive mood. And so if I look at the amount of anxiety that's represented in these dream reports by word counts, then I find that if there's more anxiety in the dream report, then they wake up feeling worse in the morning. We don't find any effects of anger and sadness, but in the inverse for positive emotion, the more that somebody represents positive emotion in the dream, and by dream report, then the better they feel in the morning. And the cool thing about this is that you can then also get away from strictly emotion, and you can say, well, what are the topics that people dream about? And does that make them feel better or worse in the morning? And so if people dream about death picked up on via these word searches, then we find that when people dream about death, they do feel worse in the morning. And when people dream about leisurely activities and a smaller effect of money, dream about money, and you will be happy when you get there. So my point here is that emotional tone of dreams is still predictive of morning mood, and so is the topical content of dreams. And then I'm not presenting it here, but we talk about it in the paper. We run some additional models that account for the sleep, just kind of classic self-reported sleep quality, like how long they were in bed and sleep efficiency and things like that. And these effects hold after we account for those things, which I think is an important part. So another approach to this question might be, how do different types of dreams influence mood? There's different types of dreams that we experience. Nightmares, I mentioned this before, the nightmares do have a negative influence on your morning mood. And then there's these big dreams, which is kind of a little bit more of an abstract or vague concept, but these are dreams that people are particularly memorable or impactful, and often do have kind of provide people with kind of transformative views the next day. And then what about these lucid dreams? So lucid dreams are being aware of the dream as it occurs. It's much more, when we think of dreams, we think about waking up from sleep, and then we think, oh, wow, that was a dream. That was a wild dream, X, Y, and Z happened. But in this case, you're gonna realize that while the dream is still going on, it's kind of a wild experience. So these numbers actually kind of surprised me. So about 50% of people have had at least one lucid dream. And about 25% of people have the monthly. I had a hard time with these because I was like, it subjectively it doesn't feel like that, but then you kind of think about it and then you go, well, I don't really know what other people dream about because we don't really talk about dreams that much culturally. So when I say, well, I had my first lucid dream and I thought, wow, I bet that nobody's having those experiences, but I don't know why. It's not that people are telling me about their non-lucids all the time. So this is a really, this is a meta-analysis I'm referencing here that I think does a good job of accounting for it. There is a lot of variation in these survey studies. One of the biggest caveats being that people often will give the surveys to dream enthusiasts, but this meta-analysis accounts for these things. And so I think that these are where the numbers land in terms of lucid dreams in the population. And lucid dreams are observed in a lab. You might have been skeptical about these for a while. people were, thinking that there were maybe kind of false awakenings or sleep paralysis. But if you were a skeptic, your time is up, because there's evidence of it in the lab. As an example, I was on my phone reading. Then I realized that my phone wasn't actually on. I was like, wait, maybe this is a dream, because now I noticed the screen was off. Then I noticed the experimenter sleeping on the floor in the room. I reality checked and air came through my nose, so I knew I was dreaming. Then I remember my signals. So what are these signals? This is what these signals look like typically in the lab, which is where, again, you have brain data in blue here, and these eye signals are where somebody's indicating that they're asleep and lucid while they're still dreaming. And then, not as pertinent to the immediate conversation, but this is another example of this two-way communication where the researchers will give them some math problems and they can continue to respond. So here they're just saying I'm lucid, and then they're kind of continuing on and having this conversation with the experimenter. So what we've been doing is some longitudinal lucid dream induction diary studies where we give people tasks at home to perform and test if they are inducing lucid dreams and how that's impacting their general dream habits and their sleep quality and their mood and all these things. So these are typically kind of like reality checks and other kind of like cognitive behavioral approaches to inducing lucid dreams that tend to work if you give people enough time to work through them. And so here I'm just going to focus on the mood aspects of these studies. There's other details that are in these references here. But here again on the y-axis is going to be higher is going to be better mood, and worse mood is going down. And so if we just take the mornings that people have had a lucid dream, they wake up from a lucid dream and they don't wake up from a lucid dream, we see that they feel better when they wake up from a lucid dream. They report feeling better after lucidity. So here we're not asking them to report dream mood or anything. We're just saying, did you have a lucid dream and how do you feel? And importantly, they're not reporting any changes in subjective sleep quality in the sense that this is the sort of time, the measures I was talking about before, like sleep efficiency and time to wake and things like that. So here, this is kind of a big deal. There's a lot of concerns about lucid dreaming. I think rightfully so. There's a lot of concerns about lucid dreams disrupting sleep quality, like sleep length and things like that. And so it's important, I think, to account for these things. That not over-interpreting the null, but there's a lot of papers recently showing null effects on sleep quality. I do think that lucid dreaming has a negative impact on sleep quality. I'll talk about that in my next project here, but at least here they're not reporting that it does. And so in a whole different data set, we asked people we were focusing here on lucidity on a continuous scale. So instead of just asking people if they were lucid or not, we asked them to report their degree of lucidity. And when we correlate with that, with their positive morning affect here, we also find that's correlated. So the more lucid they are at night, the better they feel in the morning. Lucid dreams are consistently leading to positive morning. So we might ask, okay, now we can have a little bit better a picture of what about sleep phenomenology is leading to this happy dancing waking person or this very not happy dancing waking person. What can make you just kind of a bland person here in the day? Well, the emotional tone and the topical content of your dreams is predicting morning mood here. So happy and surfing leads you to a positive morning mood, and anxious and dreaming about death topics, it's not as good. And I'm putting an asterisk here just to remind myself this to highlight the caveat that this is morning mood, and we aren't asking about mood throughout the day. So this is one sample in the morning. We'd love to run those studies. They're just a little bit more invasive. People will have to do experience sampling throughout the day. But I'm super interested in those effects too. We also know now that insight into the dream state seems to be predicting morning mood as well, in that people are having more positive morning mood after they have insight into the dream state or lucid. And both of these effects are holding after we're controlling for these classic measures of sleep quality. So I'm arguing here, I hope it's somewhat convincing that dreams are a component of sleep quality that we might account for. So if we did add dream content to this list of sleep quality, then what might a recommendation look like? These are just kind of things that we can ask. So what might we suggest to for topics of dreams. And like I said, you know, dreaming of positive experiences is maybe better. Does the dream have to be recalled? I'm not addressing that question here, but it's an important one. It's of course tough to get at. Maybe the two-way communication method can address this question, but right now it's not clear whether the dream has to be recalled. I don't think that it does, but it could be that the memory for the event, I think that would make sense too. When you recall positive memories in general, that brings back positive experience. It could be just the recall exactly. And so this will be tough to disentangle, but it's important. And then an important question to ask is, would we be interrupting an otherwise critical function of dreams? If we were to suggest that you dream about a certain topic, then are we interrupting some ongoing memory or otherwise important process about dreams? I think that the jury's out on whether that's true or not, but it's definitely something that we need to understand better. So that is the evidence I'll provide for dream mood contributing to waking mood. And now I want to talk about this potential progression that going from lucid dream to positive waking mood. How is that happening? What explains that effect? So why would lucidity or being aware of a dream lead to positive mood? Well, it could be the inherent emotional content. It could be that lucid dreams are just inherently more positive. A lot of people describe these intense positive dreams from lucidity, these kind of like awe-inspiring lucid dreams. It could be that it's the control over the dream content that allows you to change things at will and make things in your dream the way that you want them to be. It could also be this aspect of success. So this is maybe a confound. It's a confound in a sense, but so there's this idea that maybe people are trying to have lucid dreams and it's often difficult to have them. And then once you do have one, when you wake up, you feel accomplished, like, oh, I finally accomplished this lucid dream that I've been searching for. And so this could be explained with some of the positive emotion. It's a compound, but it's not a bad thing, right? You're still feeling good in the morning. So, but that might explain this relationship. And then there's really interesting commentaries that I think have to bring up some really good points about are there negative consequences of lucid dreaming? Is it always good to go for lucid dream induction, or are there some reasons to avoid it? And surely it's not a perfect system, and so it's important to consider these. And we're trying to do that. So what is the specific route from lucid dream to positive morning mood? Is what I'll ask you. And so to answer this question, we went to the lucid dreaming subreddit. So Reddit is a huge website. It's like one of the most top 10 visited sites or something like that. And so if you're not familiar, Reddit it's a kind of a huge social media site with a bunch of different targeted forums. And so if you want to talk with random people on the internet about basketball, then you go to the basketball subreddit. And if you want to talk to people about chess, then you go to the chess subreddit. And if you want to talk about lucid dreaming, you go to the lucid dreaming subreddit. And the reason that we kind of went for this data set is because people go to this lucid dreaming subreddit to talk about all things surrounding the topic of lucid dreaming, and not just lucid dreaming experiences themselves. So this is not just I had a lucid dream and this is what happened, but a lot of the potential negative issues are not about the lucid dreaming experiences exactly, but they're kind of like losing sleep and things like that. So we thought we'd catch some of that stuff here. And so this is just kind of showing how popular the site is. This is the number of posts over time over the last, since about 2010. This is as far back as the posts go. So on average, there's about 1,000 posts per month here. You can see that the site was kind of born in the middle of 2010. This is when Inception came out, mind you, is when things started crawling up. And then a big boom in 2012. And then there's a spike in 2020. I'm pretty sure that any subreddit's going to have a spike in 2020 when everybody just kind of jumped onto the internet in March of 2020 for some reason. So just some examples that I pulled out from here. Then I started to realize I was in a dream. Then I took all the control and did everything I wanted. And we're pulling excerpts from posts here. I eventually gained the ability to recognize nightmares, and I could wake myself up. Now I just don't get nightmares anymore. So hey, that worked out well. So these are examples of some really positive experiences that people have had and are sharing on the site. And then there's some negative experiences too. At first, I attempted the mild technique, which is an induction method, and woke up in the middle of the night. I had become discouraged and couldn't fall back to sleep. So this kind of some sleep loss that doesn't have to do with the lucid experience, but it has to, it's surrounding the issue of lucid dreaming. So I go to sleep and I'm aware I'm dreaming. So I try to alter it, but I fail, resulting in zombies and raptors, end up getting mauled, felt pain somehow. Wouldn't want that. So what this content analysis looks like is that the 3 human raters participated in this combination of inductive and deductive analysis, and we emphasized valence by looking specifically for positive and negative themes. What this looks like in practice is that we, as a group, develop positive and negative themes based on first existing literature. So we look in the lucid dreaming literature, we say, what are people saying that lucid dreams are used for, and what are they saying the problems are? You know, things we've already mentioned, like nightmare treatment as a positive, creativity and insight is something that the literature says people use lucid dreaming for, from survey studies and so forth. And so we use those. And then we also, and then the sleep loss and things like that. We also go to the lucid dreaming subreddit then, and also try to explore that content and say, all right, well, what concepts are being represented here? What themes can we pick up on here that aren't expressed in the literature that we think are relevant? And so the reason we took this route is because we were kind of open to the idea that we don't know all that much about lucid dreaming experiences yet. There's probably a wide variety, and especially given the new interest in these negative experiences, we wanted to explore whether there's other negative aspects we weren't catching. And so then we all break up and we go to code a subset of these forum posts on our own. And then we meet back together, discuss and adjust these themes accordingly, according to the new data that we reviewed and things like that. And so this is a little bit of an iterative process where we meet and discuss and talk about whether there's new themes we need to bring in. So the results from this are that we found some positive themes like creativity and insight, and these are kind of literature-based things, and some of these were common on the subreddit. And nightmare resolution. Dream enhancement here is any time that lucid dreaming was used to make their dream content better, whether that's through control or through, sometimes people just had positive experiences as from the nature of being lucid, even without control, like they would just say that it was kind of an awe-inspiring experience. And then for negative themes, we picked up on there's lucid dysphoria or lucid nightmares, and then the issues of poor sleep. Sleep paralysis was super common. I'll just show the numbers here. Sleep paralysis was super common. Reality confusion, which is an important topic that has been brought up recently. That here includes false awakenings, where people are confused about whether they think that they've woken up, but then they haven't. And there's also a subset of cases that are where people are awake and they start to get a little bit confused about at least in the morning, about being awake or dreaming. And interestingly, this is a new one that we found, which is like, there's some people that were like, I have a lot of lucid dreams and I would rather I'd like to tone them down. And so I think that's a really interesting, important thing to follow up on. I don't have advice for people that ask that, or I would like to have some. And so, so these numbers here are kind of statistically similar. So the number of positive themes and the number of negative themes are close. But if we code these posts then on whether somebody attained lucidity or not, we can start to differentiate, well, what actually predicts whether a theme is going to, or whether an experience with lucidity is going to be positive or negative. And here, if they attain lucidity, the way to interpret these graphs is the disproportionality of these squares. So here, it's showing that for posts that are positive, they're way more likely to have attained lucidity for posts that are positive. So this is indicating that once you're lucid, then you're much more likely to have a positive experience. And then we also rated these posts on dream control, whether they had high dream control or little to no dream control. And this is a huge effect where if people have dream control, then their lucid dreams are overwhelmingly positive experiences. And it's the majority of these no control lucid dreams where people are having these negative experiences. So I like this because you can kind of start to then put together a little bit of a process model of maybe how we can predict whether we're going to have these positive or negative experiences that as a result of attempting to induce lucid dreams. So you can imagine that you're trying to induce lucidity, and if you attain lucidity, you're more likely to go on to a positive experience. If you failed attempt, you're not guaranteed negative, but a failed attempt could lead to just poor sleep. You don't fall back to sleep. It could lead to sleep paralysis or things like that. And then once you get lucid, you're not totally in the clear yet. You would hope that you have high dream control in your experience. And then if you don't if you don't have dream control, it's more likely that you'll have a negative experience. But based on the results I showed you earlier about lucid dreaming often leading to a positive mood, I think that this is where you start to get these positive morning mood effects from once you get people lucid and they have dream control. So we're saying here that there are negative aspects surrounding lucid dreaming, and almost none of these negative experiences, though, are high control lucid dreams. And so if we're going to induce lucidity, we probably want to make sure we're inducing control with it and not just dream awareness. So what is it about control now, we can ask, that leads to this positive morning mood? And are lucid dreams themselves more positive? And if so, does positivity coincide with control, or is it an outcome of the ability to control the dream? That's a little wordy. Let me put that into diagrams, which is to say that there's two plausible alternatives here, where in one at the top, you're attaining lucidity and there's this simultaneous activation of high dream control and positive emotion. These things, one or the other or both, is leading to positive morning mood. Alternatively, you could have this much more linear process of you get lucid, you have high dream control. This allows you to increase positive emotion in your dream, and then this is leading to a good mood. So I think that we don't know this because we still don't really understand totally what it's like to have a lucid dream. There's so much variation in these experiences, and we don't know. The data on lucid dreams and the emotions in lucid dreams is mixed. Papers, sometimes people report more positive emotions, sometimes they're equal, and in some cases even negative, or less than. Sometimes people describe these as vivid and awe-inspiring experiences, and sometimes they're horrific lucid nightmares, like we've shown in that data set before. I think Tadas would probably want me to say that these numbers are really small, and that was an emphasis in the paper, that these aren't high numbers, but they do happen, and so it's important to consider that they are out there. And there's various levels of control in lucid dreams, which is something we tried to highlight there, which is just that not all lucid dreams have this high control. And these are all can kind of help address this question of why hasn't, despite lucid dreaming therapy being in the AASM recommendations for nightmare treatment, it's not really clear that it's totally working. So we have kind of a weird situation. And so to answer this question, we looked at went to Dream Views, which is a really big lucid dreaming blog where people can host public dream journals. People can host public or private dream journals, and for the ones that are public, we looked at this data, and this is another really big data set where there's almost 500 on average. So the site's kind of dying out. There's not many posts lately, but right around the middle of 2010, the site was born. So again, that's when Inception came out. It's kind of insane what Inception kind of did for lucid dreaming culture and science as a consequence. But despite this slow progression, you have almost like kind of 500 posts per month on this data set. And if I just plot on the right axis here, this same data in a cumulative distribution, here you can look at where this lands as the total amount of dreams in this data set. So this is close to 60,000 dreams that we're looking at here. And the really, really cool thing about this data set is that users have the option to label their dreams as lucid or non-lucid or a couple other categories. And so what I'm really interested in here is the ones where users have labeled their dreams as lucid or non-lucid, so we're just going to take these blue and orange subsets of the data here, where we have about 10,000 lucid dreams and then another kind of 30,000 non-lucid dreams. And if we just kind of take a glance at the text in this data set, we can look, I'll show you this whole thing here. So if we take a quick look at what kind of words people are using in lucid and non-lucid dreams, to the right are words that are more high in lucid dreams, and to the left are words that are higher in non-lucid dreams. Lucid dream, people are saying in the dream reports that they had a lucid dream. Flying, which is consistent with what we know about lucid dreams. Try, wake, hand. Hand is probably from people talking about reality checks, like trying to put their finger through their hand is a common thing. Think, decide, these are all kind of make sense with lucidity. So this is kind of validating that these labels that users provide are meaningful. And then the non-lucid dreams, friend, remember, school, these are all run. I think that these are as expected too, because these are kind of typical things that people dream about, which is kind of standard daily stuff. But we're going to get a little more targeted here. We're going to bring back Luke, and we're going to look at these specific word categories that we care about, which is insight is a Luke category that we're interested in. We're going to use this kind of as a proxy for lucidity, which is the examples in this word category are think, know, become, realize. I knew I was dreaming. I became lucid. I realized I was dreaming. These I find that this category really represents lucidity in this dream. Measuring control in text is a little bit weirder. It's kind of hard to, people often don't say I'm in control. They do sometimes here, but it's kind of hard to, you can't word search the word control because you kind of have to get a feel in the text for what gives people a sense of agency. How do people talk when they have a sense of agency over their environments and things? And so we're using this category agency here, which has a lot of words like tried, able, goal, making, maybe things that language that people are using when they have a sense of ownership over their actions. And I found this to be really good for picking up on control. And then positive and negative emotion are words that you expect: happy, excited, play, and so forth. So again, to the right is going to be higher in lucid dreams. If we look at the total effect of insight here, it is higher in lucid dreams, way higher. But you might only be somewhat satisfied by this and saying, well, what words are driving this effect? So if we look at the individual words that contribute to this effective insight, we can see that they're using language like became, realized, thought, decided. I realized I was dreaming. I decided I was dreaming. I knew I was dreaming. I became lucid. I realized. So I think this is picking up on the high degree of lucidity in those posts. Agency is way higher in lucid dreams. I tried, thought, goal. I had a goal. I was thinking. I had intention. I think these words really well capture the sense of agency that's present in lucid dreams. Positive emotion had a smaller effect than I expected, and I'll explain on the next slide why I think that is the case. But words like calm and excitement and amazing that show up in lucid dreams, and then they are way less in negative emotion. So non-lucid dreams are way higher in negative emotion. Words like bad, kill, hate, angry, miss, defeat, cut, some really nasty stuff over there. So if I could have one of these dreams, I know which one I would have. I'd be having lucid dreams for sure. One caveat here is that these effects treat the whole dream report as one event. So like for the positive emotion effect, if we think that people are getting lucid in their bad dreams and making them good, if I look at the whole dream report as one, I was being chased, I ran up the stairs and I got away. Then I became lucid, or I ran up the stairs, I was being chased, I was really frightened. I became lucid, and I turned around and I told the person to go away and I started to feel better. If I look at that whole dream, there's a lot of negative content in that dream, and it's maybe not going to be all positive. So there is a temporal progression that we might expect with lucid dreams. And so I want to see how these features unfold over time within the lucid dream. So now we're going to run a loop not just on the text as a whole, but we're just going to break the dream report up into little segments of text. And the only difference in the analysis really is that I just make the requirement that the dreams be longer because I need enough data in each little segment to look at. So if I look at the non-lucid progression and the positive emotion progression in non-lucid dreams, then you see it's relatively flat and there's a big spike at the end, which I'm not going to talk about, speculate on now, but I think it's definitely interesting to think about why there's a spike in positive emotion towards the end. It's important to consider that the end of a dream report might not be dream content and might be reflection on the dream. This is a caveat about the dream reports. What I think is so interesting is that if you look at the lucid trajectory, it matches with the non-lucid early on here. And it's only in the second half of the dream that lucid starts to diverge and become more positive. So if we look at this as a difference measure in between these two blue and orange lines, we see that positive emotion gets higher than in lucid dreams only towards the second half of the dream. And that if we look at agency and how this changes, it spikes way earlier. And so it's pretty, people have agency pretty consistently earlier, but it comes online way before this positive emotion. And this kind of matches with what we see in the negative, and this kind of matches with what we see in insight. So I'm arguing that these cognitive features peak before the largest changes in emotion. And then this kind of gives us we can now kind of lean into one of these alternatives, which is that lucid dream control is offering this route to positive emotion. People get the control first, and then there's this positive emotion change in dream content. And that's maybe what is leading people to become lucid. And so now we can kind of update this model too, and we can say, all right, well now we think that you need to get lucid. You need to, if you're attempting lucidity, you want to get lucid, you want to have our dream control, and then it's probably going to lead you to positive emotion and informed. So that is it. That is the second, concluding the second half here, where dream control ensures a positive lucid experience, and it also prefaces positive dream changes. So if I want to throw this back into the context of sleep quality, if we're adding memory reactivation and dreams here, I didn't talk about memory reactivation, but if I wanted to talk about, but I think that dreams is just one way of getting at this question about how sleep phenomenology matters. And then these are the things that we said wake experience in waking life that influences your sleep quality. And I think that what I'm arguing here isn't really that weird, even because stress, trauma, fatigue, excitement, anxiety, these are all things you experience in your dreams. And so they're going to, the same way you experience them during wake, you experience them during your dreams, and those are going to impact how you feel. And then lucid dreaming might be recommended in some cases. It offers a route to control your dream experience, as one typically does your wake experience. When we say waking stress is bad for sleep, it's easy to tell people what to do. Well, avoid stressful activities and adjust your reactions. Lucid dreaming provides people the ability to respond how they want. You can't tell people to avoid stressful activities in their dreams unless they are have some control over that content. So this is just my acknowledgement slide. I want to thank the Penny Baker Language Lab at UT. This is where I got my PhD. I didn't study with them exactly, but I studied with Jared Lewis Peacock on working memory. But here, I met them there, and they were really helpful, and Ashwini in particular, in helping us get all these loop analyses going. And then Michelle Carr, who lets me collaborate on all her projects, and Karen and the rest of the lab at Northwestern have been really helpful on this stuff. And Laura, who is helped me a lot on the Reddit project, she's kind of co-running that Reddit project with me. And she, as I understand it, is looking for a PhD or master's program interested in these kinds of topics. So if anybody has any recommendations or anything, please let me know, and I'll forward that information to you. That's it.